The silence in the apartment was the worst part. It wasn't just quiet, it was empty. The kind of emptiness that echoes, that makes a home feel like a hollowed-out shell. My voice, if I dared to use it, would bounce off the bare walls, a lonely sound in a space that used to be filled with laughter. Jen's laughter. I taped up another box, the sound of the plastic stripping away from the roll feeling unnaturally loud. Kitchen, fragile, I wrote in thick, black marker. Fragile. The word felt like a punch to the gut. Everything was fragile. Our life, our future, the tiny, beating heart on the ultrasound picture I kept on the counter. I picked it up for the 100th time. It was just a grainy, black and white image, a little bean-shaped smudge that was supposed to be our child. My child. My son or daughter. A wave of guilt, so powerful it made my knees weak, washed over me. I leaned against the counter, my knuckles white as I gripped the edge. What kind of man leaves his pregnant girlfriend? What kind of father runs away when things get hard? The question circled in my head, a vulture waiting for me to break. Am I the asshole? Am I the monster in this story? Maybe I was. Maybe I'd look back on this day in 10 years and see it as the moment I destroyed everything good in my life. But right now, in this suffocating silence, it felt like the only way to breathe. I folded the ultrasound picture carefully, tucked it into my wallet, and taped up the last box. The keys to the apartment sat alone on the clean countertop. A final, gleaming testament to our failure. I took one last look around, memorizing the ghosts of our happy memories, and walked out the door, leaving the silence behind for someone else to fill. 2 months earlier, my world wasn't silent. It was loud and vibrant and perfect. It was a Tuesday in April. The Ohio sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, the kind that makes you believe good things are on the horizon. I was on a job site, dust and sweat clinging to my skin, the smell of sawdust thick in the air. We were framing a new build, and the rhythmic thud of the nail gun was music to my ears. It was the sound of progress, of creation. It's what I love about construction, taking a blueprint, a piece of empty land, and building something real. Something that will stand for decades. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, wiping a dusty thumb across the screen. It was Jen. A picture message. My heart did a little flip. It was a picture of a pregnancy test. Not just one, but 3 of them, all lined up on our bathroom counter. And on every single one, 2 stark pink lines. I dropped my hammer. It clanged against the plywood floor, and a couple of the guys looked over. I didn't care. I just stared at my phone, a slow, stupid grin spreading across my face. I zoomed in on the picture, as if looking closer would make it more real. 2 lines. Unmistakable. My fingers fumbled as I tried to call her. Leo. Her voice was shaky, a mix of excitement and terror. I knew that sound. Jen, I breathed out, my own voice thick with emotion. Are you? Is this for real? It's real, she whispered. I took another one. A digital one. It says, pregnant. I let out a whoop of pure joy, so loud that the entire crew stopped working and stared at me. I didn't care. I pumped my fist in the air. I'm gonna be a dad. I yelled to no one in particular. A few of the guys cheered, others just shook their heads and went back to work, used to my occasional bursts of energy. I was a personal trainer in the evenings, so I always had a little extra fire. But this was different. This was a supernova. That night, we celebrated. We didn't go out to a fancy restaurant. We ordered a large pepperoni pizza, Jen's favorite, and sat on the floor of our cozy little apartment, dreaming. We talked about names, about whether it would be a boy or a girl. Jen was already worried about morning sickness. I was already worried about being a good enough father. We were scared, but we were scared together. It was the best kind of fear. Just 2 days later, the universe decided to double down on our good fortune. I got a call from my realtor. An offer I'd put in on a house, a fixer-upper I'd been eyeing for months, had been accepted. It was a long shot, I'd been outbid twice. But the other buyers fell through, and the sellers were motivated. It was ours. It wasn't much to look at yet. A small, two-story colonial with peeling paint and a porch that sagged like a tired old man. But it had good bones. It had a big backyard with a huge, ancient oak tree, perfect for a tire swing. I could see it. I could see our future in the crooked lines of that old house. I saw a nursery with pale yellow walls. I saw a kitchen filled with the smell of pancakes on a Saturday morning. I saw a home. When I told Jen, she cried. Happy tears. She wrapped her arms around my neck and buried her face in my shoulder. A baby in a house, Leo, she mumbled into my shirt. It's all happening. It's all happening, I repeated, holding her tight. I felt invincible. Like I was the king of the world, building my own little kingdom for my queen and our future prince or princess. We were a team. That's what I always loved about us. We weren't one of those couples who lived in each other's pockets, but we were deeply connected. We trusted each other. In 4 years, we'd never had a real, blowout fight. We had disagreements, sure, but we always talked them through. We respected each other's privacy. The idea of looking through each other's phones was something we joked about as a massive red flag. If you have to snoop, the relationship is already over, I'd said once, and she'd agreed completely. Our foundation was solid. Or so I thought. The first crack in that foundation appeared about a week later. Jen was on the phone with her best friend, Amanda. They'd been friends since kindergarten, the kind of deep, lifelong bond that I, with my handful of good but scattered buddies, had always admired. Amanda had moved to California for a tech job a few years back, but she and Jen still talked almost every day. I was in the kitchen making dinner, and I could hear Jen's excited voice from the living room. I know, it's crazy. Both at once. Yes, of course, you'll be the godmother, you psycho. She laughed, and the sound warmed the whole apartment. Then, her tone shifted. Wait, what? Are you serious? No, don't do that, Amanda, your job, but wow. Okay. Wow. She came into the kitchen a few minutes later, her phone still in her hand, a dazed look on her face. What's up? I asked, stirring the pasta sauce. That was Amanda, she said, leaning against the doorframe. I gathered. Everything okay? She's moving back. I stopped stirring. Back here? To Maple Creek? Jen nodded, a slow smile spreading across her face. She's quitting her job. She said she couldn't stand being across the country while her best friend is having a baby. She wants to be here for all of it. A strange feeling, cold and unwelcome, crept into my stomach. I should have been happy for Jen. This was her person, her lifelong friend, coming home to support her. It was a beautiful gesture. But my history with Amanda was complicated. I never liked her. It wasn't one specific thing. It was a collection of small moments, of subtle jabs and backhanded compliments over the years. Whenever she'd visit from California, there was an edge to her interactions with me. She'd compliment my physique in a way that felt less like a compliment and more like she was reducing me to just my body. Oh, Leo, still keeping all those muscles shiny, she'd say with a smirk. She'd bring up Jen's ex-boyfriends in front of me, laughing about old memories that I wasn't a part of. It always felt like she was trying to establish some kind of dominance, to remind me that she knew Jen longer, knew her better. That I was a temporary fixture in a permanent friendship. Jen, bless her heart, was always oblivious to it. To her, Amanda was perfect. Amanda was family. Any time I'd ever hinted at my discomfort, Jen would get defensive. She's just joking, Leo. That's just her personality. You're being too sensitive. So I learned to bite my tongue. I learned to smile and play along. It was a small price to pay for Jen's happiness. And since Amanda lived 3,000 miles away, it was a price I only had to pay once or twice a year. But now, she was moving back. Not just to the same state, but to our town. Maple Creek wasn't a big place. You couldn't go to the grocery store without running into someone you knew. Amanda wasn't going to be a visitor anymore. She was going to be a permanent part of our daily lives. Isn't that amazing? Jen said, her eyes shining. I forced a smile. Yeah, honey. That's great. She came over and wrapped her arms around my waist from behind, resting her cheek against my back. I know you two haven't always clicked, but this will be a chance for you to really get to know her. She's so excited for us. I wanted to believe it. I really did. I wanted to believe that Amanda's intentions were pure, that she was just a loyal friend coming home. I turned around and kissed the top of Jen's head. I'm happy if you're happy, I said. And I meant it. Her happiness was the most important thing in the world to me. I just had a sinking feeling that my own was about to become a lot harder to hold on to. The perfect, vibrant world we had built was about to get a new resident. And I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't coming to build with us. She was coming with a wrecking ball. Amanda arrived at the end of May, on a wave of synthetic lavender perfume and an excess of luggage. Jen and I drove to the Columbus airport to pick her up. The 40-minute drive was filled with Jen's excited chatter, her leg bouncing with anticipation. She was practically vibrating. I tried to absorb her energy, to let it infect me with the same joy, but my gut was stubbornly quiet, refusing to join the party. When Amanda emerged through the sliding glass doors, she was exactly as I remembered, but somehow more polished, more sharp. California had sanded down her small-town edges and replaced them with a sleek, confident veneer. She shrieked when she saw Jen, and they ran to each other in that dramatic, movie reunion way, dropping bags and hugging like they'd been separated by war, not a handful of states. I stood back, offering a polite smile, feeling like an extra in their scene. Oh my God, look at you. Amanda squealed, holding Jen at arm's length. There's a bump. A tiny little baby bump. Jen blushed, placing a hand over her stomach. It's barely anything. It's everything. Amanda declared. Then her eyes landed on me. Her smile tightened just a fraction. Leo. Still looking like you could punch through a wall. Amanda, I said, my voice even. Welcome back. I took her heaviest bags, the muscles in my back protesting. She'd always had a way of making me feel like a pack mule, both literally and figuratively. The whole way back to the car, she held Jen's hand, firing off questions about the pregnancy, the doctor, the nursery plans. I was an afterthought, the chauffeur. It was a role I was familiar with when she was around. She was staying with her parents for the first few weeks until she found her own place. We dropped her off at their tidy little house, the one she grew up in, just a few blocks from where Jen's mom lived. Before she got out of the car, she leaned over the seat and gave Jen another fierce hug. I'm so glad I'm home, she whispered, loud enough for me to hear. Now I can help you keep an eye on things. She glanced at me as she said it, a quick, unreadable flicker in her eyes. For the first week, things were deceptively calm. I threw myself into the house renovations. Every spare moment I had, I was over there, pulling up old carpet, tearing down dated wallpaper, and sanding floors. The physical labor was a relief. It was straightforward. You put in the work, you saw the results. It was clean. My relationship with Jen, I was quickly learning, was about to get very, very messy. Amanda was a constant presence. She and Jen were inseparable. They went shopping for maternity clothes, they got pedicures, they sat in our living room for hours, drinking decaf coffee and talking in low voices that stopped whenever I entered the room. I tried. I really did. I invited Amanda over for a barbecue. I told her all about my plans for the house, trying to include her, to make her feel welcome in our new life. It's a lot of work, Leo, she said, poking at a piece of grilled chicken on her plate. She had this way of stating the obvious as if it were a profound, negative revelation. Are you sure you're not in over your head? With the baby coming and everything? It's a lot of pressure. I can handle it, I said, keeping my tone light. It's good work. It's for my family. Of course, she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You're just lucky you have me here now. To help Jen. She can't be stressing about renovations when she should be focusing on the baby. It was the first little seed. The first tiny wedge she placed between my work and Jen's well-being, framing my efforts not as providing for our family, but as a source of stress for our family. Jen, of course, defended me. Leo's doing amazing, Mandy. You should see the floors he refinished. Oh, I'm sure, Amanda said, waving a dismissive hand. He's great with all that manual stuff. The poison was subtle, delivered in sweet-tasting doses. The main target was always Jen's insecurity. Jen was a beautiful woman. She wasn't stick-thin like the models on magazine covers, she had curves. A real woman's body that I adored. But she'd always carried a little bit of self-consciousness about it, a nagging feeling that she wasn't small enough, or toned enough. It was a tender spot, and Amanda pressed on it relentlessly, disguising her cruelty as concern. We were out for dinner one night, a rare occasion for just the two of us. Jen was scrolling through my Instagram, something she did often. She loved looking at the before and after pictures I posted of my clients' fitness transformations. Wow, this girl, Chloe, her results are incredible, Jen said, showing me the phone. You're a miracle worker. She worked hard, I said. She earned it. She's so tiny, Jen said, her voice a little smaller. She's a client, honey. That's it. I reached across the table and took her hand. You know you're the only one for me, right? You're the sexiest woman I've ever seen. She smiled, but it was a fragile thing. I know. It's just hormones. I feel like a whale already. You're beautiful. You're growing our baby. Her smile became a little more real. The moment passed. But I found out later that Amanda had watered that little seed of doubt until it sprouted. A few days after that dinner, I came home from the gym late. Jen was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, looking pale. Amanda was with her, rubbing her back. Everything okay? I asked, dropping my gym bag by the door. Jen's just feeling a little anxious tonight, Amanda said, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. We were just talking. About what? I asked, walking over to Jen and kissing her forehead. She felt cool. Jen wouldn't meet my eyes. It's nothing. It's not nothing, Amanda interjected, standing up. We saw a picture of that Chloe girl on your work page. The one you train. I just told Jen she's so lucky to have a partner she can trust completely. I don't think I could do it. My boyfriend being surrounded by half-naked, skinny little things all day. I'd be a wreck. Every word was a carefully chosen weapon. Skinny little things. Half-naked. She was painting a picture for Jen, a scenario designed to inflame her deepest insecurities. I looked at Amanda, my jaw tight. Chloe is a professional client. And my clients are not half-naked. Oh, I know, I know. Amanda said, holding up her hands in mock surrender. I'm just saying, Jen is a saint for being so secure. Especially now, with her body changing so much. It takes a really strong woman not to get into her head about that. She was framing Jen's anxiety as a weakness, and my job as a threat. The message was clear, a normal woman would be suspicious. If you're not suspicious, you're not normal. After Amanda left, the mood in the apartment was heavy. You okay? I asked Jen, sitting beside her on the couch. I hate feeling like this, she whispered. I know you would never cheat. I know it in my heart. But my head it just goes to these crazy places. It's her, Jen, I said, my voice gentle but firm. She's putting this stuff in your head. Before she came back, we never, ever had these conversations. She's just worried about me, Jen insisted, pulling away slightly. She's my best friend. She's trying to protect me. Protect you from what? From me? From our life? My frustration was starting to build. What is there to protect you from? I don't know, she said, tears welling in her eyes. I just feel crazy. I held her and told her everything was going to be okay. But I knew it wouldn't be, not as long as Amanda was a whisper in her ear. The breaking point, the first real one, came about a week later. It was after midnight. I was asleep when I felt the bed shift. I opened my eyes and saw the dim light of a phone screen illuminating Jen's face. She was sitting up, and she had my phone in her hands. My heart stopped. For a second, I didn't say anything. I just watched her. Her thumb was scrolling, her brow furrowed in concentration. She was looking for something. Evidence of a crime I hadn't committed. The sense of betrayal was so sharp, so sudden, it felt like a physical blow. This was it. The red flag we always joked about. It was here, in our bed, in the middle of the night. Jen. My voice was quiet, but it made her jump like she'd been shot. She gasped, fumbling the phone. It clattered onto the nightstand. Leo. You scared me. What are you doing? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. She started to cry. It was her go-to defense now. Instant tears. I'm sorry. I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. I had to. You had to what? Go through my phone. I sat up, the sheet falling away. The room felt cold. Jen, what the hell is going on? This isn't us. I know, she sobbed. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Amanda said she said that in this day and age, couples who have nothing to hide share everything. Location tracking, passwords, she said it's not about mistrust, it's about total transparency. I don't give a damn what Amanda said. I snapped, my voice louder than I intended. This is about you and me. Do you trust me, Jen? Yes or no? Yes, but. There's no but. You either trust me or you don't. And if you're sneaking out of bed to search my phone like a detective, then you don't. The hurt in my own voice surprised me. It was raw. Please, Leo, don't be mad, she pleaded, reaching for me. I pulled back. I couldn't let her touch me. Not right now. I felt contaminated by her suspicion. Did you find what you were looking for? I asked, my voice flat. Did you find the proof you needed that I'm a piece of crap? No, she whispered, her head bowed in shame. There was nothing. Just texts from your mom and pictures of the house. Of course, there was nothing, I said, swinging my legs out of bed. I needed space. I paced the small bedroom, feeling like a caged animal. This has to stop, Jen. This poison that Amanda is feeding you, it's going to kill us. It's going to destroy everything we've built. She cried harder, her shoulders shaking. I'll stop. I promise. It won't happen again. I'm just so scared and hormonal. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her more than anything. I looked at the woman I loved, crumpled and crying, pregnant with our child, and my anger softened into a deep, aching sadness. I went back to the bed and held her, rocking her gently. Okay, I whispered into her hair. Okay. We're going to get past this. But as I lay there in the dark, holding her, I felt a chasm opening between us. She had crossed a line we had both agreed was sacred. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that even though she had promised, this was not over. It was only the beginning. The promise lasted less than 2 weeks. It was a fragile truce, a piece of glass we were both trying not to step on. I walked on eggshells, hyper-aware of my every action. I started leaving my phone face up on the counter. I'd tell Jen every time a female client texted me, explaining in detail what it was about. "Hey, Chloe just confirmed her session for tomorrow at 6. That was Sarah, she's rescheduling." I was providing a running commentary on my own life, trying to preempt any suspicion before it could take root. It was exhausting. I felt like a suspect in my own home, constantly needing to provide an alibi for a life I was living in plain sight. Jen, for her part, tried to be normal. She'd kiss me and thank me for being so understanding. But the anxiety still clung to her like a shadow. I'd see it in the way her eyes would dart to my phone when it buzzed, the forced casualness in her voice when she'd ask, "Who was that?" The trust wasn't rebuilt, it was just patched over with a thin layer of her promises and my transparency. And Amanda was always there, ready to pick at the seams. Amanda's influence became more insidious. She started framing her advice as a form of modern, feminist empowerment. "You're not being suspicious, Jen," I overheard her saying one afternoon while I was in the kitchen. They were in the living room, their voices carrying easily. "You're being smart. You're protecting your investment. This baby is an investment. Your future is an investment. You have a right to know everything. A man who has nothing to hide, hides nothing. It's that simple." She made it sound like demanding access to my private life was a sign of strength, not insecurity. She was twisting the narrative, turning a toxic behavior into a righteous act of self-preservation. And Jen, already vulnerable and feeling a loss of control over her own body, was clinging to this warped logic like a life raft. The renovations on the house were my only escape. The dust, the sweat, the physical ache in my muscles, at the end of the day it was real. It was honest. I'd spend hours there, sometimes late into the night, just to have a space where I didn't feel watched, where the air wasn't thick with unspoken tension. I'd sit on the floor of what would be the nursery, the moonlight streaming through the bare window, and I'd talk to my unborn child. I'd tell them about my day, about the new floors I'd put in, about how much I couldn't wait to meet them. It was in those moments, in that empty room, that I felt most like a father. But then I'd have to go home. Back to the apartment. Back to the fragile truce. The final straw came on a Saturday night. It was just after 10. We'd had a quiet evening, watched a movie. It almost felt like the old days. Jen had been relaxed, leaning against me on the couch, her hand on her belly. I let my guard down. I allowed myself to hope. As we were getting ready for bed, I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth. Jen came and stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. She had that look on her face again. The hesitant, pained expression that always preceded a storm. "What's wrong?" I asked, my mouth full of toothpaste. "Can I see your phone?" I spit into the sink, my heart sinking into my stomach. I rinsed my mouth, stalling, trying to gather my thoughts. I looked at her reflection in the mirror. She looked small and scared. "Jen. We talked about this," I said, my voice low and strained. "You promised." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "And I'm trying. I really am. But Amanda was over today while you were at the house, and she said something that got in my head." "Of course. Amanda. The ghost at the feast. What did she say this time, Jen?" "She just asked if I've ever thought about how much time you're spending at that house. Alone. She said a man with a pregnant girlfriend should want to be home with her, not off by himself all the time." The accusation was so outrageously unfair it momentarily stunned me. I was breaking my back to build us a future, to create a safe and beautiful home for our child, and that snake was twisting it into something secretive and suspect. I am building our home, I said, turning to face her. The bathroom felt impossibly small. The home you and I picked out. The home where we're going to raise our baby. That's why I'm there. For us. I know that, Leo, she cried, tears starting to fall. I know it in my head. But my heart gets so scared. Please. Just this one last time. Let me look. If I see for myself that there's nothing, I'll know I'm being crazy. It will put my mind at ease. Please. I looked at her, at this woman I loved more than life itself, and I saw two people. I saw the Jen I fell in love with, sweet, funny, and strong. And I saw this new Jen, a frightened, paranoid stranger who had been hollowed out by insecurity and filled with someone else's poison. A cold, hard resolve settled over me. This couldn't go on. It wasn't a life. It was a prison sentence. For both of us. Okay, I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. Okay, Jen. Here's the deal. I walked past her into the bedroom and picked up my phone from the nightstand. I held it out to her. You can look. You can look through every message, every picture, every single app. But this is it. This is the last time. And when you find nothing, because you and I both know there is nothing to find, two things are going to happen. She looked at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and relief. First, I said, my voice steady and firm, you are going to make an appointment with a therapist. We will go together, or you will go alone, I don't care. But you need to talk to a professional, someone who can actually help you, not someone who is feeding your anxiety for sport. And second, you are going to distance yourself from Amanda. I'm not telling you to end your friendship. But you need space. You need to get her voice out of your head so you can hear your own again. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. If you look through this phone and you don't find a single suspicious thing, you have to agree to those two conditions. No more excuses. No more broken promises. Do you agree? She hesitated, her hand hovering near the phone. She was staring at me, searching my face. Maybe she was finally seeing the edge I'd been pushed to. The finality in my tone. Yes, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I agree. She took the phone from my hand. Her fingers were trembling. I walked over to the window and stared out at the streetlights, my back to her. I couldn't watch. I felt a profound sense of humiliation, of violation. It was like standing naked in a town square, allowing a stranger to search you for stolen goods you never took. I could hear her soft inhales and exhales. The quiet tapping of her finger on the screen. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Each second was an indictment of what we had become. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was thick with shame. There's nothing. I didn't turn around. I just kept staring out the window. I know. Leo, I'm so sorry. Do you agree to the conditions, Jen? I asked, my voice flat. There was a long pause. I heard her place the phone back on the nightstand. Yes, she said. I agree. I finally turned to face her. The tears were streaming down her face, but she wasn't making a sound. She looked utterly broken. A part of me wanted to rush to her, to hold her and tell her it was all okay. But I couldn't. Not this time. This wasn't something my comfort could fix. This was a wound that needed more than a bandage. Okay, I said, my voice softening just a little. Then we'll start tomorrow. We'll find a therapist. And you'll tell Amanda you need some space. She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She looked like a lost child. I felt a terrible mix of pity and resolve. This was the right thing to do. It was a painful, ugly ultimatum, but it felt like the only path back to sanity. The only way to save us from drowning. That night, we slept on opposite sides of the bed, a canyon of silence and hurt between us. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. A desperate, fragile hope that we had finally hit rock bottom. And from rock bottom, the only way to go is up. I was wrong. Rock bottom, I would soon discover, had a basement. The agreement felt like a new dawn, but it was a false one. The sky was still dark. Jen's promise, born from a moment of shame and desperation, couldn't withstand the light of day. It couldn't withstand Amanda. The next morning, Jen was quiet. The shame from the night before had cooled into a sullen defensiveness. I tried to be gentle, to approach it as a team. I looked up a few therapists online, I said over breakfast. I slid my laptop across the table to her. This one, Dr. Evans, she specializes in anxiety and relationship counseling. Her office is only 15 minutes away. We could call her today. Jen stared at the screen without really seeing it. She pushed a piece of scrambled egg around her plate. I just think we should wait a little, she mumbled. My stomach tightened. Wait. Jen, you agreed. Last night. I know, but it feels so drastic, she said, finally looking at me. Her eyes were pleading. Going to therapy. It's like admitting we're broken. We are broken, I said, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. What happened last night was broken. Me giving you an ultimatum is broken. This is how we fix it. This is the first step. I just need some time to process, she insisted. And telling Amanda I need space, how am I supposed to do that? She's my best friend. She moved back here for me, for the baby. It would crush her. She is crushing us, I countered, my voice rising. Can you not see that? None of this was a problem until she showed up. That's not fair, Leo, she shot back, her own voice rising to meet mine. You've never liked her, so you're just blaming her for everything. Maybe the problem is us. Maybe my insecurities are real. Maybe I have a reason to be worried. It was a low blow, and it hit its mark. The implication hung in the air between us, maybe I was doing something wrong. After everything, after proving my innocence time and time again, she was still choosing to believe the shadow of a doubt over the man sitting right in front of her. The fight devolved from there. It was our first real, shouting match. All the resentment I had been swallowing for weeks came pouring out. All her fear and defensiveness erupted. We threw words at each other like stones, each one leaving a bruise. By the end of it, we were both exhausted and raw. Nothing was solved. She hadn't called the therapist. And she hadn't spoken to Amanda. She had reneged on our deal. She had looked me in the eye, given her word, and then broken it less than 12 hours later. That was the moment something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud, dramatic break, but a quiet, clean one. It was the realization that I couldn't fix this. I couldn't love her out of her insecurity. I couldn't reason her out of her paranoia. I couldn't protect our relationship from an enemy she refused to see. The only thing I had left to protect was myself, and by extension, the child who deserved at least one stable, sane parent. I didn't say anything else. I just stood up, went into the bedroom, and packed a bag. A week's worth of clothes. My toiletries. The dog-eared paperback I was reading. Jen followed me, her face a mask of confusion and panic. What are you doing? I'm leaving, Jen. I didn't look at her. I just kept folding shirts and placing them in my duffel bag. My movements were calm, deliberate. Leaving? What do you mean, leaving? Are you breaking up with me? Her voice cracked on the last word. I don't know what I'm doing, I said honestly, zipping the bag. But I can't stay here. I can't live like this. This apartment, it doesn't feel like home anymore. It feels like an interrogation room. I walked past her, grabbing my keys and my wallet from the counter. I paused at the ultrasound picture, still sitting there. A silent witness to our collapse. I couldn't bring myself to take it. It felt like it belonged here, with her. "Leo, please," she begged, grabbing my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Don't do this. We can fix this. I'll call the therapist right now. I promise." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back up to her tear-streaked face. Her promises were worth nothing now. They were just words she used to delay the consequences. "It's too late for promises, Jen," I said, gently removing her hand. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. "I need to go. I need to breathe." I called my best friend, Mark. He's one of those no-nonsense, loyal-to-the-bone friends everyone should have at least one of. I didn't even have to explain the whole story. "Hey, man, can I crash on your couch for a bit?" was all I said. "For as long as you need," he replied, no questions asked. The doors open. Driving away from the apartment building was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I saw Jen standing in the window, watching me go. The image of her, small and alone, was seared into my brain. Every instinct I had screamed at me to turn the car around, to go back upstairs and hold her and tell her we'd figure it out. But the quiet, broken part of me knew better. It knew that going back would just mean more of the same. More accusations, more broken promises, more slow, soul-crushing decay. I was choosing short-term agony over long-term misery. It was a brutal piece of emotional arithmetic, but it was the only calculation that made sense anymore. I felt terrible. Not for me, but for our child. This innocent life was now caught in the crossfire. Jen would probably have to move in with her mom, Karen. Karen was a good woman, but her house was tiny. The thought of Jen, pregnant and stressed, squeezed into her childhood bedroom, filled me with a profound and heavy guilt. My child's first home would be a place of tension and cramped quarters. It was the exact opposite of the stable, loving environment I had dreamed of providing. Was I being an asshole? The question roared back to life, louder than ever. I was abandoning my pregnant girlfriend. On paper, it was an unforgivable act. I was the villain of the story. But what was the alternative? Stay and let the toxicity poison everything, including the baby? Let our child be born into a home where the parents looked at each other with suspicion and resentment? Where one parent was constantly walking on eggshells and the other was constantly on the verge of a paranoid breakdown? I didn't have the answer. All I had was the hum of the engine and the white lines of the road blurring past. Mark's apartment was on the other side of town, but it felt like it was in another country. A country where I could finally, for the first time in months, just breathe. When I got to Mark's, he took one look at my face, handed me a beer, and just sat with me in silence. He didn't push. He didn't pry. He just let me be. After an hour of sitting on his worn-out leather couch, staring at the TV without seeing it, I finally told him everything. From Amanda's arrival to the ultimatum to me walking out the door. He listened patiently, nodding every so often. When I was done, a spent and hollowed-out wreck, he just shook his head. "You're not the asshole, man," he said, his voice firm. "You're a guy who hit his breaking point. There's a difference. You can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Jen's gotta figure out her own stuff. You can't do it for her." His words were a small comfort, but the guilt remained, a heavy cloak I couldn't take off. That night, I slept on his couch, the unfamiliar sounds of his apartment a stark reminder of how adrift I was. I fell asleep thinking about the house. My house. The one I was supposed to be moving into with Jen. Now, it was just an empty building. A monument to a future that had just died. And I was the one who had signed the death certificate. The days that followed were a blur of sawdust and grief. I did the only thing I knew how to do, I worked. I poured every ounce of my anger, my frustration, and my heartbreak into that house. I channeled my pain into the swing of a hammer, the scrape of a paint scraper, the whine of a circular saw. The house became my sanctuary and my penance. I was building a home I would now live in alone, a constant, tangible reminder of my failure. My phone was a minefield. Jen called and texted constantly. Her messages swung wildly between desperate pleas, angry accusations, and guilt-ridden apologies. Leo, please come home. I can't do this without you. How could you do this to us? To our baby? You're a coward. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I'll do anything. I called Dr. Evans. I left a message. I read them all, each one a fresh twist of the knife. I knew she had probably moved in with her mother by now. I pictured her there, miserable and cramped, and the guilt was a physical weight in my chest. But I couldn't go back. Not yet. Mark's words echoed in my head, you can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. I had to let the fire die down first. I focused on the nursery. It felt like the most important room, the heart of the house. I tore out the old, stained carpet, revealing beautiful hardwood floors underneath. I spent 3 days sanding them down, first with a coarse grit, then finer and finer, until the wood was as smooth as silk. I was erasing the past, trying to create a clean, perfect surface. A new beginning. I painted the walls a soft, gentle yellow, the color of sunshine. As I rolled the paint on, I imagined our baby sleeping in a crib in the center of the room, safe and peaceful. The image was so clear, so painful, that I had to stop and lean against the wall, my eyes burning with unshed tears. Mark was a lifesaver. He'd show up at the house after his own workday with a 6-pack of beer and a pizza. He wouldn't talk about Jen unless I brought her up. Instead, he'd grab a paintbrush or help me haul drywall. He filled the silence with easy conversation about sports, about work, about anything other than the gaping hole in my life. His steady, uncomplicated friendship was an anchor in my storm. One evening, we were sitting on the newly finished porch, drinking a beer and watching the sunset paint the sky in strokes of orange and purple. Heard from an old buddy today, Mark said, taking a sip of his beer. Mikey Gallo. You remember him from high school? I vaguely recalled the name. Yeah, I think so. Played shortstop, right? That's the one. He's a cop now, over in Westerville. We were just catching up. Mark paused, swirling the beer in his bottle. He had a look on his face that told me this wasn't just idle chatter. And? I prompted. And he was telling me this crazy story about a domestic call he went on a few years back. Some girl called the cops on her boyfriend, claiming he was cheating and getting aggressive. Cops show up, the guy is totally calm, just trying to leave. The girl is hysterical, screaming, throwing things. Turns out, she'd been stalking him, convinced he was sleeping with his coworker. No proof. Just got this idea in her head and went nuclear. I listened, a cold feeling creeping up my spine. It sounded disturbingly familiar. The guy just wanted out, Mark continued, looking at me. He packed a bag, she blocked the door, called the cops saying he assaulted her. Mikey said it was obvious she was lying. They had to threaten to arrest her for filing a false report just to get her to let the guy leave. Total nightmare. That's crazy, I said, my voice quiet. Yeah, Mark said, taking another drink. The girl's name was Amanda. The world stopped for a second. The chirping of the crickets, the distant hum of traffic, it all faded away. Amanda? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. Jen's Amanda? Mark nodded slowly. Mikey said he'd never forget the name. Amanda Miller. He said she had this way of crying without any tears, just making a lot of noise. Said it was the best performance he'd ever seen. It was like a key turning in a lock I didn't even know was there. Suddenly, all the small, unsettling pieces clicked into place. The subtle digs, the way she framed her paranoia as empowerment, the relentless chipping away at Jen's confidence. This wasn't just a misguided friend trying to be protective. This was a pattern. This was a deliberate, calculated campaign of psychological warfare. And Jen was not her first victim. I felt a surge of white-hot anger, so intense it made me dizzy. This whole time, I had thought the enemy was Jen's insecurity. But the insecurity was just the weapon. The enemy was Amanda. She had done this before. She had weaponized a woman's fear, driven a wedge between a couple, and nearly ruined a man's life with false accusations. And now she was doing it all over again. She's not trying to protect Jen, I said out loud, the realization solidifying into a cold, hard fact. She's trying to destroy me. Looks that way, man, Mark said grimly. That knowledge changed everything. It didn't erase my pain or my guilt, but it reframed it. I wasn't fighting a phantom. I wasn't battling Jen's inner demons. I was fighting a very real, very malicious person who was intentionally trying to blow up my life. And she was using the woman I loved and my unborn child as ammunition. This new clarity gave me a sense of purpose. I wasn't just hiding out and licking my wounds anymore. I needed a plan. I needed to protect Jen and our baby from this predator, even if Jen couldn't see the danger herself. I decided to start going to therapy on my own. I called Dr. Evans, the therapist I had found for Jen, and made an appointment for myself. If I was going to face this, I needed my own head to be on straight. I needed tools. I needed a strategy. My first session with Dr. Evans was like opening a pressure valve. I told her everything, holding nothing back. I told her about our happy life before, about Amanda's return, about the phone checking, the ultimatum, the fight. I told her what Mark had discovered. She listened with a calm, focused intensity that was immediately reassuring. When I was done, she didn't offer easy answers or platitudes. Leo, she said, her voice gentle but firm, it sounds like you are dealing with a classic case of manipulation, both from Amanda and, as a result, from Jen. What Amanda is doing is a form of triangulation. She's inserting herself into your relationship to gain control and destabilize it. And she's preying on Jen's pre-existing insecurities to do it. Hearing a professional validate my feelings was incredibly powerful. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't just being too sensitive. So what do I do? I asked, feeling helpless. How do I fight back when Jen thinks she's the one I'm fighting? You can't control Jen's actions, and you certainly can't control Amanda's, Dr. Evans said. The only thing you can control is your response. Right now, by moving out, you've done something very important, you've established a boundary. You've said, I will not participate in this dynamic. That was a healthy, albeit painful, act of self-preservation. We talked about strategies. About how to communicate with Jen without getting drawn into a fight. About focusing on I statements. Instead of, you broke your promise, I should say, I feel hurt when promises are broken. It seemed like a small change, but Dr. Evans explained that it was about taking ownership of my feelings instead of casting blame. I left that first session feeling lighter than I had in months. I still had a mountain to climb, but for the first time, I felt like I had a map. The call came 2 days later. It was from Jen's mom, Karen. Her voice was frantic. Leo. It's Jen. You need to get to the hospital. Now. My blood ran cold. What happened? Is she okay? Is the baby okay? She was coming down the stairs, and she tripped. She's bleeding a little. The doctor wants to check her out. She's asking for you, Leo. Please, just come. I didn't hesitate. I dropped the paintbrush I was holding, ran out of the house, and drove toward the hospital, my heart hammering against my ribs. All the anger, all the strategies, all the boundaries, they all evaporated. All I could think about was Jen and our baby. Please be okay. Please be okay. The hospital waiting room was a sterile, beige purgatory. The air hummed with the quiet anxiety of strangers, each lost in their own private crisis. I paced the floor, my work boots leaving faint, dusty footprints on the polished linoleum. Every time a nurse walked by, my head would snap up, my heart lurching with a desperate hope. Karen found me first. She rushed over, her face pale and etched with worry, and pulled me into a hug that felt both comforting and accusatory. "She's in room 302, she said, her voice trembling. "They're running some tests. The doctor said the bleeding is minor, but they want to be cautious." She fell pretty hard. "Is she?" I couldn't finish the sentence. "She's scared, Leo," Karen said, her eyes welling up. "She keeps asking for you." Then, her expression hardened slightly. "She's been a wreck since you left. This wouldn't have happened if she wasn't so stressed, living out of boxes at my place." The guilt was a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. I knew she was right, at least partially. My leaving had created the chaos in which this accident happened. But before I could respond, another figure appeared at the end of the hallway. It was Amanda. She walked towards us with a determined stride, her face a carefully constructed mask of concern. She put her arm around Karen's shoulders. "Any news?" she asked, her voice soft and consoling. She completely ignored me, as if I were a piece of furniture. The blatant dismissal was so deliberate it was almost comical. "Leo just got here," Karen said, gesturing toward me. Amanda's eyes finally flickered in my direction. There was no sympathy in them. Only a cold, triumphant glint that disappeared as quickly as it came. "Oh," she said, her tone flat. "Good. I'm glad you decided to show up. The accusation was clear, you, who abandoned her, are finally gracing us with your presence." My therapy session with Dr. Evans echoed in my mind. You can't control her actions. You can only control your response. I took a deep breath, anchoring myself. I would not get into a fight with this woman in a hospital waiting room. "I'm not here for you, Amanda," I said, my voice calm and low. "I'm here for Jen and our baby." Before she could retort, a doctor in blue scrubs came through the double doors. "Family of Jennifer Riley." We all surged forward. "I'm Dr. Morrison," she said, her expression kind but professional. "Jen is stable. The fall caused a small subchorionic hematoma, which is essentially a bruise, a collection of blood between the uterine wall and the chorionic membrane. It's fairly common, and in most cases, it resolves on its own. The baby's heartbeat is strong and steady. We're going to keep her overnight for observation, but we're optimistic that everything is going to be just fine." The relief was so immense, my legs nearly gave out. I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes for a brief moment. "Thank God." "Can we see her?" Karen asked. "Yes, she's asking for you. But please, one at a time for now. We want to keep her calm and her stress levels down." The doctor gave a pointed look that seemed to encompass all three of us. "I'll go first," Amanda announced immediately, already starting down the hall. No, the word left my mouth before I even thought about it. It was quiet, but it stopped her in her tracks. She turned, an incredulous look on her face. I looked at Karen. "She's asking for me," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I'm the father of her child. I'm going in." Karen hesitated, looking between me and Amanda. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes as she looked at her daughter's best friend. Amanda's pushiness, her attempt to take charge, was a little too aggressive, even for a crisis. "Leo's right," Karen said softly to Amanda. "Let him go." Amanda's face tightened into a furious knot. She shot me a look of pure venom before turning on her heel and stalking over to the waiting room chairs, pulling out her phone with angry, stabbing motions. I walked down the hallway, my heart pounding for a different reason now. This was it. The confrontation I had been dreading and preparing for. I pushed open the door to room 302. Jen was lying in the hospital bed, looking small and pale against the crisp white sheets. She had an 4 in her hand, and a monitor next to the bed beeped with a steady, reassuring rhythm. Her eyes were closed, but they fluttered open when I entered. "Leo," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Tears immediately welled in her eyes. I rushed to her side, taking her free hand in both of mine. It felt cold. "I'm here," I said, my voice thick. "I came as soon as I heard. The doctor said you're both going to be okay." I was so scared, she sobbed, clinging to my hand. I thought I lost the baby. It would have been all my fault." "Hey, no. Don't say that," I said, stroking her hair back from her forehead. "It was an accident. It's nobody's fault." We stayed like that for a few moments, the only sound in the room the steady beep of the monitor and her quiet sobs. All the anger and resentment I'd been carrying felt petty and insignificant in the face of this. This was what mattered. Her, and the tiny life she was carrying. When her crying subsided, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with a raw, desperate vulnerability. "Don't leave me again, Leo. Please. I can't do this alone. I know I messed up. I know I broke my promise. I was just so scared. I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever you want. Just please come home." This was my chance. I could have said yes. I could have erased all the pain of the last few weeks and gone back to the way things were. It would have been so easy. But Dr. Evans' voice was in my head again. "A boundary is not a punishment. It's a statement of what you need to feel safe." "I'm not going to leave you, Jen," I said softly. "I will be here for you and for this baby every single step of the way. I'll come to every doctor's appointment. I'll help you financially. I will be a father to our child. But I can't come home. Not yet." Her face crumpled. "Why?" "I just told you I'd do anything." "Because home isn't a place we can go back to right now," I said, choosing my words carefully. "We have to build a new one. On a stronger foundation. And we can't do that until we deal with the real problem." Right on cue, the door creaked open. Amanda peeked her head in. "Is everything okay in here?" "I brought you some water, Jen." She walked in, holding a plastic cup, her eyes flicking between us, assessing the situation. This was it. The moment of truth. I didn't take my eyes off Jen. "Jen," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I know something. Something about Amanda." Amanda froze, her plastic smile faltering. Jen looked from me to her, confused. "What are you talking about?" "I know what happened with your ex-boyfriend, Amanda," I said, turning my head to look directly at her. "I know about the fake police report in Westerville. I know about the false accusations. I know that you've done this before." Amanda's face went white. She looked like I had slapped her. For a split second, I saw pure, unadulterated panic in her eyes. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her voice suddenly high-pitched. "You're crazy. You're just trying to turn her against me." "Am I?" I pressed, keeping my voice calm. I turned back to Jen, my grip on her hand tightening slightly. "Honey, she's not your friend. She's been systematically isolating you and feeding your deepest fears. She did the same thing to her last boyfriend's girlfriend. This is what she does. She gets off on the drama, on breaking people apart." "That's a lie." Amanda shrieked, her voice echoing in the small room. "Jen, don't listen to him. He's the one who abandoned you. He's a manipulative monster. Jen was looking back and forth between us, her face a canvas of confusion and dawning horror. Her best friend, her rock, was being accused of something monstrous. And her boyfriend, the man she loved but didn't trust, was making the accusation with an unnerving, steady confidence. Her world was tilting on its axis. "Amanda, is it true?" Jen whispered, her voice barely audible. Did you really call the cops on an ex?" The direct question seemed to shatter Amanda's composure. The mask fell away completely, revealing the ugly, twisted rage underneath. "He deserved it," she spat, her eyes blazing with a wild fury. "He was a cheater and a liar, just like this one." She pointed a trembling finger at me. "I was trying to protect you, Jen. I was trying to make you see what he is before he destroyed you, the way I was destroyed. But you're too stupid and weak to see it. You'd rather believe him, the man who walked out on you, than the one person who has always been in your corner." And there it was. The confession, wrapped in a tirade of rage. In her fury, she had admitted everything. The room fell silent. The only sound was the steady, rhythmic beep of the heart monitor. Beep. 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 The sound of a life that was, for now, safe. Untouched by the chaos that had just exploded around it. Jen stared at Amanda, her face utterly blank with shock. She slowly pulled her hand from mine and raised it, pointing a trembling finger toward the door. "Get out," she whispered. "Jen," Amanda started, her voice suddenly pleading. "Get out." Jen screamed, her voice raw with betrayal and pain. "Get out of my room. Get out of my life." Amanda stared at her for a long moment, her face a maelstrom of shock and fury. Then, without another word, she turned and fled the room. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving a silence that was heavier and more profound than any before it. Jen turned her face away from me, towards the window, and a single, silent tear traced a path down her cheek. The foundation of her world hadn't just cracked. It had been dynamited. And we were standing in the rubble. The silence Amanda left behind was a living thing. It filled every corner of the small hospital room, pressing in on us, heavy with the ghosts of 1,000 toxic words and one final, shattering truth. The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only sound, a fragile metronome counting out the seconds of our new reality. Jen didn't move. She just stared at the blank wall, her profile rigid. The single tear on her cheek was followed by another, and another, until they traced silent, shimmering paths down her skin. She wasn't sobbing or wailing. This was a deeper, quieter kind of grief. The grief of betrayal. The grief of self-realization. She was mourning the loss of her best friend, but I suspected she was also mourning the person she had allowed herself to become. I felt a strange, hollow victory. I had been right. The validation I craved was here, undeniable. But seeing her like this, so utterly broken, brought me no joy. I had wanted to defeat an enemy, but in doing so, I had been forced to watch the woman I love get caught in the blast. My anger at Amanda was still there, a hot coal in my chest, but it was overwhelmed by a profound sadness for Jen. I waited. I didn't push. I didn't say, "I told you so." I just stood by her bed, my hand resting near hers on the sheet, offering a presence without demanding a response. This was her moment to process the implosion of a lifelong friendship. Finally, after what felt like an hour, she turned her head slowly and looked at me. Her eyes were red-rimmed and empty. "I'm so stupid," she whispered, her voice raspy. "No, you're not," I said softly. "You were manipulated. She was your best friend, Jen. You were supposed to be able to trust her." "But I should have trusted you," she said, her voice cracking. A fresh wave of tears came. "I let her turn me into a monster. The way I treated you looking through your phone, accusing you God, Leo. I am so sorry." This apology felt different from all the others. It wasn't a panicked plea to stop me from leaving. It wasn't a defensive justification. It was a simple, stark admission of guilt. It was the sound of someone who had finally, truly seen the wreckage around them and was taking responsibility for their part in it. I took her hand. It was still cold. I know, I said. I'm sorry, too. I'm sorry I had to give you an ultimatum. I'm sorry I left. I didn't know what else to do. You did the right thing, she said, her voice barely audible. You tried to warn me, and I wouldn't listen. You had to protect yourself. She closed her eyes. I don't know what to do now. She was everything. My whole support system. She wasn't your support system, I said gently. She was your saboteur. And you still have a support system. You have your mom. You have me. We're not going anywhere. But you left, she whispered, the old fear creeping back into her voice. You're not home. This was the crossroads. I took a deep breath, marshalling the words Dr. Evans and I had practiced. I'm not living at the apartment, Jen. But I'm not gone. I am here. We have a lot to figure out. And a lot to heal from. Both of us. We can't just pretend this didn't happen and go back to the way things were. We have to build something new. Something better. She looked at me, seeming to understand. She wasn't just hearing the words, she was feeling the truth in them. The path back to each other wasn't a simple return trip. It was a new journey we'd have to start from scratch. Okay, she whispered, squeezing my hand. Okay. I stayed at the hospital until she fell into an exhausted sleep. I watched the steady rise and fall of her chest, a sight more reassuring than any words. I spoke quietly with Dr. Morrison before I left, who confirmed again that the prognosis was good. Rest and low stress were key. The next day, Jen was discharged. I was there to pick her up. Karen was there too, and her demeanor towards me had completely changed. The suspicion was gone, replaced by a weary gratitude. She hugged me, a real, heartfelt hug this time. Thank you for coming, Leo, she said. Thank you for being here for her. The car ride to Karen's house was quiet, but it wasn't the tense, angry silence of before. It was a fragile, contemplative quiet. The silence of two people standing in the aftermath of a storm, unsure of where to begin cleaning up. I helped her carry her things into her old childhood bedroom. It was small, cluttered with relics from her teenage years. A boy band poster was still faintly visible under a coat of beige paint. It was a heartbreakingly inadequate space for a pregnant woman to be living. The sight of it reaffirmed my resolve. I had to finish our house. I had to build the safe, stable place she and our baby deserved. As I was about to leave, she stopped me at the door. Leo, she said, her voice nervous but determined. I have my first appointment with Dr. Evans on Thursday. At 2 o'clock. I looked at her, surprised. She'd actually done it. She had a cancellation and my mom called for me yesterday, she explained, as if needing to prove it was real. Will you go with me? You don't have to. But I think it would help. If you were there. It was the most important invitation I had ever received. It was a tangible sign of her commitment. It was the first brick being laid for our new foundation. I'll be there, I said without hesitation. I'll pick you up at 1:30. A small, genuine smile touched her lips for the first time since the hospital. Okay, she said. Thank you. The therapist's office was calm and decorated in soothing shades of blue and gray. It felt like neutral ground, a demilitarized zone where we could finally talk without fear of ambush. We sat on a comfortable couch, a box of tissues on the table between us like a silent peace offering. Dr. Evans was brilliant. She was a gentle but firm guide, creating a space where Jen felt safe enough to be truly vulnerable. For the first hour, I barely spoke. I just listened. I listened as Jen, in a halting, quiet voice, talked about a lifetime of feeling less than. Less thin, less smart, less successful than the people around her, especially Amanda. She described Amanda as the sun she had always orbited, never realizing the light was burning her. I believed her because I already believed those things about myself, Jen explained, twisting a tissue in her hands. When she said a man like Leo would never be truly faithful to someone who looked like me, a part of me thought she's right. He's so handsome and fit, and I'm me. She just gave voice to the ugliest thoughts in my own head. She looked at me then, her eyes swimming with regret. And so I made you the villain. Because it was easier to believe you were doing something wrong than to believe my best friend was a monster and I was a deeply insecure person. It was easier to be angry than to be scared. Hearing her lay it all bare like that, without excuse or blame, was transformative. It was like a window had been opened into her soul, and for the first time, I could truly see the fear that had been driving her. My own anger, the hard knot of resentment I'd been carrying, began to dissolve. It was replaced by a wave of empathy so powerful it almost brought me to my knees. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't talk about my anger. I talked about my hurt. I used the I statements Dr. Evans had taught me. I felt betrayed when you looked through my phone, I said. I felt helpless when you wouldn't listen to my concerns about Amanda. I felt like I was losing my partner, the person who was supposed to be on my team. Tears streamed down Jen's face, but this time, they were tears of understanding, not defense. She was finally hearing me. We left that session feeling raw, but clean. The infection had been lanced. The poison was out. The air between us was clearer than it had been in months. On the drive back, instead of taking her straight to her mom's, I took a different turn. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice soft. "I want to show you something," I said. I pulled up in front of the house. The late afternoon sun lit up the new coat of gray paint on the siding, making the white trim look crisp and clean. The porch no longer sagged. It was strong and welcoming. "Leo, it's beautiful," she breathed. "Come on," I said, taking her hand. "I want to show you the inside." I gave her the tour, my voice filled with a pride I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. I showed her the gleaming hardwood floors, the brand new kitchen cabinets I had just finished installing, the big, open living room. Finally, I led her upstairs. I pushed open the last door on the left. "This is my favorite room," I said. She stepped inside and gasped. The room was bathed in the warm, gentle light of the setting sun, streaming through a large window. The walls were the color of soft sunshine. It was the nursery. She walked to the center of the room and slowly turned in a circle, taking it all in. "You did all this," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Even when we were fighting. You were still building this for us." "I never stopped building it for us," I said quietly. She turned to me, her eyes searching mine. "I still don't get it, Leo. The part one can't wrap my head around is why. Why would she do this? Why did she hate you so much? What did you ever do to her?" It was the question that had been lurking in the back of my own mind. The missing piece. "I don't know, Jen," I said honestly. "Maybe she was just jealous of what we have. Maybe she's just a broken person who likes to break things. I don't think we'll ever really know." She nodded, accepting it for now. She walked over to the window and looked out at the big oak tree in the backyard. I came and stood beside her. We weren't touching, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were standing on the same side. "It's a beautiful room," she said softly. "It's a perfect room for a baby." I looked at her silhouette against the golden light, her hand resting on her growing belly. And in that quiet, sun-drenched room, surrounded by the home I had built, I felt the first, fragile flicker of a new hope. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't an ending. Maybe this was the beginning. The weeks that followed were a slow, careful dance of rebuilding. We didn't rush back into anything. I didn't move back in. Jen didn't move out of her mom's house. Instead, we started dating again. It was the only way I could describe it. We went to our therapy sessions, both together and separately. We met for dinner. We took walks in the park. We learned to talk to each other again, without the shadow of Amanda looming over us. Jen was changing. With every session, she seemed to stand a little taller. She started talking about the future with a tentative excitement I hadn't heard in months. She was actively working on herself, untangling the knots of insecurity that Amanda had so cruelly exploited. She cut off all contact with Amanda, blocking her number and her social media accounts. It was a painful but necessary amputation. For my part, I worked on forgiveness. Not just forgiving Jen, but forgiving myself. Forgiving myself for not seeing the danger sooner, for the ultimatum, for the pain my leaving had caused. Dr. Evans helped me see that my boundary wasn't an act of cruelty, but one of survival. It was the only move I had left on a board that was rigged against me. I finished the house. The last coat of paint was applied, the last fixture installed. It was ready. It was a beautiful, solid, empty home. I moved my things in from Mark's place, my few boxes looking comically small in the spacious rooms. The silence was different now. It wasn't the suffocating, grief-stricken silence of the old apartment. It was a peaceful, expectant silence. A blank canvas. About a month after the hospital incident, Jen and I were in a joint session with Dr. Evans. We had made incredible progress. We were communicating, we were honest, we were rebuilding trust brick by painful brick. "I want to talk about something today," Jen said, her voice quiet but steady. She had been holding something back, I could tell. There was a final door that remained closed. "There's one more thing that I haven't been honest about. A piece of the puzzle that I didn't understand until recently." Dr. Evans and I both looked at her, waiting. "After Amanda left the hospital, I was a wreck," Jen began, her eyes focused on her hands, which were clasped in her lap. "But after a few days, the shock wore off, and the anger set in. I kept replaying everything in my head. All the little comments, all the advice. And I kept coming back to what she screamed at the end. 'He's a cheater and a liar, just like this one.' She was talking about her ex, the one she called the cops on. And I realized I'd never actually heard the full story of that breakup. It was always just, 'He was a terrible guy, he broke my heart.'" She took a deep breath. "So, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I found him on social media. Her ex-boyfriend. His name is Kevin. I sent him a message. I just said, 'I think we have a mutual acquaintance, and I need to understand something.' I didn't know if he'd even reply. My heart started to beat a little faster. I had no idea she had done this. He replied almost immediately," Jen continued. "He was wary at first, but when I told him what had happened to me and Leo, he opened up. We talked on the phone for almost 2 hours. He told me everything." She finally lifted her head and looked at me. Her eyes were filled with a deep, sorrowful understanding. The reason Amanda was so obsessed with him cheating, the reason she targeted his female coworker, wasn't because he was a flirt. It was because he had rejected Amanda years earlier. Before they even dated. They were in the same circle of friends. One night at a party, she came on to him, and he politely turned her down. He said it was a small thing, he barely even remembered it. But he said that from that moment on, she became obsessed with him. She pursued him relentlessly until he finally agreed to go out with her. He thought she was just persistent. He didn't realize it was a conquest. The air in the room grew thin. A cold, horrifying realization began to dawn on me. Their entire relationship, Jen said, her voice trembling slightly, was her trying to prove she could have him. And the moment she felt secure, she started trying to isolate him, to control him. The cheating accusations were her projecting her own deepest insecurity onto him. She couldn't stand the idea that any woman could have his attention, because in her mind, his attention was a prize she had won after being initially denied it. The co-worker she accused him of sleeping with? She was the girl he had been talking to at the party right before Amanda made her move. Dr. Evans was silent, her expression intent. I felt like the floor was tilting beneath my feet. I listened to his whole story, Jen said, her voice dropping to a whisper. And then I asked him a question. I asked him if he remembered the party. The one where he turned her down. She paused, taking a shaky breath. He did. And he remembered who I was with that night. Because I was the one who introduced him to Amanda in the first place. The memory hit me like a physical force, a ghost from 6 years ago. It was a summer barbecue at a mutual friend's house. Before Jen and I were officially a couple, back when we were just friends who were circling each other, both of us too nervous to make the first move. Amanda was visiting from California. I remembered her. She'd been flirty, laughing too loud at my jokes, touching my arm. I'd been polite but distant. My attention was entirely on Jen that night. Later, Amanda found me by the drinks table. She was direct. You're cute. We should get out of here. I remember being taken aback. I just shook my head and said something like, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm kind of hoping to talk to Jen. I had gestured across the lawn to where Jen was standing. Amanda's face had changed. The flirty smile vanished, replaced by a tight, cold expression. She just said, fine, and walked away. I hadn't thought about it again. It was a non-event. A blip. To me. To her, it was the moment the war started. Oh my God, I breathed, the words coming out without my permission. It was never about her being jealous of our relationship, Leo, Jen said, tears finally spilling over. It was about revenge. On you. For rejecting her. She wanted to take from you the one thing you chose over her, me. And if she couldn't have you, she was going to make sure you couldn't have me either. She was going to burn my life down just to get back at you for a slight you don't even remember. The sheer, venomous pettiness of it all was staggering. Years of simmering resentment, a long, patient game of destruction, all because of a 2-minute interaction at a party. It wasn't about Jen's insecurity or my job or my female clients. Those were just tools. The motive was older, colder, and far more twisted. I looked at Jen, and all I could feel was an overwhelming wave of love and compassion. She had not only faced her own demons but had bravely hunted down the source of the poison. She had found the final, missing piece, not for her own validation, but for mine. To give me the answer to the question she'd asked in the nursery, why? We left the session hand in hand. The final ghost had been exorcised. The last shadow had vanished. That evening, I went to Karen's house. I didn't call first. I stood in the doorway of Jen's small room, where her bags were packed. She was supposed to move into a new apartment a friend had found for her. It was the sensible, next step we had agreed on. A neutral space for her to continue healing on her own. Don't go to the new apartment, I said. She looked up, confused. What? Don't go there, I repeated, my voice thick with emotion. I stepped into the room and took her hands. Come home. Please. The house is empty. It's not a home without you and the baby. I built it for us. I never stopped building it for us. It's time for us to start our life. Together. For real this time. Her eyes filled with tears, but for the first time in a long time, they were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. Are you sure? She whispered. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, I said. The final scene of our nightmare wasn't a dramatic confrontation. It was a quiet, domestic moment a week later. We were in the nursery. The sunshine was pouring in, just as I had imagined. I was awkwardly trying to assemble a crib, fumbling with the instructions, and Jen was laughing at me, a real, full-bellied laugh that echoed through the house. She came over and put her arms around me from behind, resting her cheek against my back. Her belly pressed gently against me. I could feel the faint, fluttering movements of our child inside. A secret kick, just for us. You know, she said softly, her voice filled with a peaceful certainty. I think we're going to be okay. I stopped struggling with the Allen key and put my hands over hers, holding them tight against my chest. I looked around the sun-drenched room, at the home we had almost lost, at the future we had fought so hard to reclaim. I know we are, I said. And in the quiet peace of our new beginning, I finally, truly, believed it.